Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Six today. I'm your host, Floyd, and today I'm really excited to be joined from Mike Burrows from Miratech. Glad to have you on the call today, Mike. Excited to be talking all things CCaaS and addressing some of the key pain points in the sector. But before we get into the detail, it'd be great if you could just introduce yourself to our audience and give a bit of a background about Miratech.
Sure, absolutely. I'm Michael Burrows. I am the director of CX solutions here at Miratech. I've been here almost 3 years now. Prior to that, I've got 28 plus years of experience in the contact center industry, primarily with the large financial services in the US, managing both the business operations strategy side as well as technology. So, a breadth of experience on both sides, fully understanding the entire contact center ecosystem from both sides of the internal fence when it comes to running the operations. But I also, based on that, I've had experience both as a client and a consultant, and primarily leveraged financial services, healthcare, logistics, and telecommunications companies.
Yeah, brilliant. So you got tons of expertise then. So yeah, looking forward to getting to the devil of the detail, especially because maybe even like over the last 5 years, the way AI's helped evolve CX has been like extraordinary. So I'm sure you've got some great insights on that over a longer period of time. So the first kind of topic I'd like to talk about is that I've read tons of studies. I'm sure you guys have, and the kind of stat that stands out is that 80% of tech specialists tend to regret their decision when choosing a CCaaS vendor. Obviously, AI has been hailed as this amazing thing that's going to fix the whole world. So why do you think this number's so high? And are vendors helping to kind of like reduce this number a little bit?
I think there's a couple of things when you really step back and think about it, right? A lot of times the vendors or the SIs are trying to sell a solution, right? They're trying to sell just the product and what it does, and they don't take the opportunity to understand what the client needs are. They don't take the time to understand what the client's CX strategy is and their entire ecosystem, because they walk into places with, I'm selling product X and it's going to work for absolutely everyone. And that's not true. You can't take that approach on it. Each vendor product is going to meet each client's needs differently, right? The other side of this is most clients don't possess the experience or understanding of the market to properly evaluate all the solutions. They only are going to understand what the vendor sales or marketing teams are showing them. It's I like I said, I've been in this industry a long time to see a lot of great demonstrations from vendors, and they look wow, and people get wowed on those without really understanding how to dig into them. The other part is, especially now as we're moving to cloud or CCaaS, there is a lot of different fee structures and different SLAs that are very unclear. And the vendors try to get you to lock in to minimum spends and minimum usage. And until clients start using it, they don't always fully understand that pricing structure. So they get regret afterwards. And then a lot of times clients will go in and say, I want to buy the cheapest thing today. Well, that old saying, you get what you pay for. And what happens is go in and buy something cheap, and then they pay for it later because it's expensive, fixing it, enhancing it, making it meet their actual needs.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one thing that might be overlooked quite a lot, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's about integration. I think that can be a particular pain point, and we'll get onto scalability later, but they're kind of interlinked. So why do you think integration is a particular pain point when choosing a vendor, and what should enterprises be asking their vendor?
I think the one thing, and I like to look at CCAS just as anything else. It's a black box solution, right? And it really is meant to provide certain levels of service. And there are always, it doesn't matter who your client is, how big they are, how small they are. Contact center is an ecosystem. There's more to it than just the CCAS solution. Yes, the CCAS solution is the engine and typically the quote unquote brains that drive it all, but
Mhm.
they're not always looking at internally developed or third party solutions that customers use. Particularly in financial services, that it's huge that they have a lot of their own internally developed systems. There's a lot of assumptions that companies are using the sales forces or the Pegas and for everything, and it's just not the case. So you've got to understand how to integrate to those homegrown applications. The other part is the client needs to ask themselves, what is the API set this vendor has? Is it feature rich? Is it very open? Is it supportable? Is it, to your point, you were just talking about scalable later. Is it scalable? Can it communicate with what we have today? So that's another big thing. And then the last thing is, especially when you get into the larger, medium to larger enterprise solutions, they're not going to leverage the out of the box reporting of the CCaaS solution. I don't care how good or how bad it is. They are really looking to get the data out, and how do I get it out and merge it with my data that I need from other systems and to compile it. So those are kind of some of the big things that they have to think about when they're looking at the CCaaS vendors.
Yeah, definitely. And just to carry on the theme of scalability there, because we both touched on it, what do you say the key factors to consider when choosing a vendor to scale with you? Because obviously, some contact centers might be starting small, but they might be on their like growth journey. They may be a startup, but in 5 or 6 years' time, they might have, 200-300 more seats, maybe even more. So how important is that? And also how do you figure that out?
So one of the big things, I like to think I take a different approach to looking at vendors when I'm evaluating them for clients and to make the right choice. The most important thing to me is always is just like when you're building a house, you start with the foundation. You look at what the foundation is. So your foundation is going to tell you how scalable or how quickly it can make adaptations in the future for you. So you got to look at the architecture. Just like AI, we throw the word CCaaS out there very loosely. But when you really start looking at architectures of these, all the vendors that say CCaaS, they're not all cloud native microservices solutions. So you have to look at the architecture and understand if is it going to fit your need? Is it what your organization needs from scalability, disaster recovery, all of that stuff that normally gets overlooked. So to me, like I said, the foundation, the architecture is key. That's where you should really start to look. Ask them how their solution scales up and scales down. Some vendors obviously do it automatically up and down without you even seeing it happen. Others have people monitoring it and scaling up for you. And a lot of times when you scale up, you're stuck paying for what you scaled up to. You can never scale down. So you got to understand that. And then, like I said, if you're okay with it being done by a group of people that are monitoring it and manually making the change, and that's okay. You just have to understand how it's being done and does it meet your needs.
Mm, yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of enterprises, maybe it's a bit harsh, but seems to be learning the hard way when it comes to like one size fits all. That's probably like the sales pitch for a lot of these vendors, right? But that doesn't always work. So why do you think one size fits all approach might not be the right way to go? And what would your advice be for people that may be stuck at that stage where they've come to the realization that it's not working?
Right. I think if you've ever heard the saying, jack of all trades, master of none, that's kind of similar to what you get into when you talk about one size fits all with CCAS. And the mentality that a single platform can replace everything in your ecosystem, it's a noble concept. It really is. And in some organizations it can work. But when you start getting into like I said before, the medium to the large enterprises, they have such advanced features and advanced requirements that they need that a lot of times they have to look at almost the best in breed of the third parties and bring them in. And you have to, as an organization, before you start this journey of evaluating and making the choice, you have to sit down and you have to understand what are your priorities, what features can you not live without, and which ones it's okay if it doesn't quite meet our needs. We'll change our procedures and processes internally, right?
Mhm.
And the other part of it is understanding the vendor. They all, from a standpoint of if I need an enhancement or a customization, they all treat it differently. So understand how that vendor works. Can that meet your long-term goals if you just don't have the flexibility and you have to wait for them? And then again, and I've said this multiple times, and I'm a huge advocate of this. remember that the CCaaS solution is just one part of your CCaaS or your contact center ecosystem, right? You have to understand your big picture and how that piece fits into it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we're obviously AI. You know, it's at the very bottom of like the trajectory of where it's going to go, and it's only going to go up. But for a lot of these enterprises, if they don't adopt AI, then AI, like from the vendor's perspective, will start to stutter. And you know, maybe one enterprise chooses one vendor that doesn't work for them, and then the decision maker then decides AI doesn't work for us, rather than it actually just being like the wrong solution for them. So do you think that onus is on vendors to kind of like pitch AI in a different way to make sure it is working for people, or should enterprises just kind of do their research a little bit better?
I think just like any buzzword in the technology industry, AI is another one of those huge buzzwords. I
Hmm.
think in my opinion, the term gets misused a lot. It gets thrown around because it's the cool new buzzword, and so I think from that standpoint, I would say the client needs to properly educate themselves on what AI is and what AI means to them,
Hmm.
and really understand it, and really sit down and define for yourself, like, not don't if you need to go talk to vendors to learn to create your definition, then by all means go do that, but at some point you have to set what your definition is, and how you want to you know attempt to implement AI. And I will tell you from my experience, AI is not as widely used in the contact center as people would think. As much as the word is thrown around, there's a lot of people still just trying to understand it and learn it and approach it.
Yeah, definitely. Because there's a big disparity, isn't there, from people trying out AI to people implementing AI in their business. So I guess that's testament to that, really. So what would you say the best case scenario would look like when selecting the right vendor? Or maybe the question could be reframed a little bit to kind of what the non-negotiables are, or should be rather.
Yeah, I think the big thing is you need to do your due diligence, right? Make sure that in the selection process or the review process that you structure it in a way that you can go back to factual reasons why you've chosen that vendor and sit down and define them. Know your requirements. Too many times, vendors are chosen based off emotions of liking a vendor, history with a vendor, things of that nature, and then they fall into that 80% we talked about earlier, right? Right. And I'll say this again, understand the architecture. That is the foundation of absolutely everything. And ask yourself, can they grow with your needs? Is it scalable? Is it built on technology that allows them to make feature enhancements quickly? Some of the technology, they just can't make them. You have to understand that also, who you're speaking to. Do they have your best interest at heart? Or are they going to be a partner? Or are they looking to sell you a license and walk away?
Hmm.
You have to be careful because a lot of times you will get somebody that wants to sell it to you, and then as soon as you buy it, they hand you off to a partner or somebody else to do the implementation. So you have to understand what that is. Work to understand the full transparency on pricing, SLAs, things of that nature. Not all of them are priced the same. I've done many evaluations over the last 3 years, and every time I ask for the pricing exercise, even though you lay out exactly what you want, you get all different submissions based on that. And then really know what integrations you need and how much the extra cost will be. The whole thing about one size fits all, a lot of these CCaaS solutions have app stores,
Hmm.
and there's a reason why they have app stores, because they can't meet everyone's needs. And so you have your base license cost, and then you have to figure out what you're going to add on from the app stores to meet your needs. So those are the big things.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, maybe we're going off on a little bit of a tangent, but that seems to be my my style really. But obviously data management's so important as well, because obviously if you've not implemented AI before, then you're looking at some CCaaS solution that's got like tons of AI wrapped within it.
Hmm.
If you've got dirty data, then you're going to have a lot of headaches implementing and integrating and even scaling all of these solutions that have been designed to help.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So just a final question then. What immediate actions do you think enterprises can take right now to help them work with the right vendor?
I think there's a couple of big things, right? One is engage with a vendor agnostic partner, one that's going to give you guidance and support without bias. And the big thing for me is, and I mentioned this earlier, get a partner that's not motivated by license commissions, right? Something that Miratech provides. We don't have license commissions, so we're going to give every client the transparency of what each vendor strengths and weaknesses are to meet their needs. Not so just that's number one. Don't be sold on fancy slide decks and vaporware. Demonstrations of a product, can or cannot do, right? Know what your organization goals are, know what you want your contact center ecosystem to look like, and define its roadmap. And then lastly, I think this is the big thing that I've seen be very successful over the last few years, especially as everything feature wise seems the same now that you're in CCaaS versus being on premise. Build 3 to 4 key use cases that demonstrate the transformation and customer experience that you want in your organization. Make the demos or make the vendors give you live demonstrations of them. Take the time to do it, and you'll thank yourself later because you'll actually be able to see the product in use in your real world scenarios that you experience in your contact center.
Amazing. Thanks for your insights there, Mike. It's great to hear all about your perspective on the state of CCaaS, but unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. So I'd just like to thank all of our listeners for tuning in to another episode on the CX Today YouTube channel. Make sure you like and subscribe, and just thanks again, Mike, for joining us on the platform today.